The church stood as a relic of the past, with its structure crafted from time-worn red brick and a sturdy foundation of limestone blocks. Its imposing double doors at the entrance and a requisite number of stained glass windows gave it a timeless aura. However, the attached buildings were more modern additions, a result of the church expanding into nearby vacant lots as the neighborhood fell into decline. Over time, these expansions included a homeless shelter and a soup kitchen, forming a vital part of the Fishtown area. Father Doyle managed everything with remarkable efficiency, ensuring operations continued even during tough times. While parking remained a challenge in this part of town, the abundance of nearby residents within walking distance sustained the church's lifeblood. Recently, young professionals began moving into the area, transforming the remaining homes into desirable properties. Some of these newcomers even expressed interest in attending church services. "Good morning, Daniel," a tall, middle-aged man paused from wiping the floor to respond. "Good afternoon, Father, and good morning to you as well. Any plans for your birthday today?" "I still think you should take the day off like I suggested." Daniel smiled. "Sort of. The ladies in the auxiliary department are trimming my beard this afternoon. Miss Stella from the thrift store is setting me up with a fancy sport coat she saved just for me. Tonight, I'm going out for the first time in nearly 8 years." Father Doyle's curiosity was piqued. "And where's the destination?" "I've decided on the Shireen. I think I've saved enough to enjoy nearly anything on their menu. It's classy, maybe a little flashy. Since I'll be walking, I'm treating myself to a nice glass of red wine." "After all, 50 comes only once," Daniel said with a chuckle. "Do you have enough money?" "Don't worry, Father. Save your generosity for someone who really needs it." Both men shared a quiet laugh before resuming their tasks. For the past 8 years, Daniel Brown had called a small room in the basement of St. Vincent's Church his home. In exchange for room and board, he took meticulous care of the church grounds, keeping the facilities spotless and handling minor maintenance issues. For anything beyond his expertise, Daniel coordinated outside contractors at a nominal fee. He also extended his skills to assist impoverished parishioners, many of whom preferred paying a token sum rather than accepting free help. Daniel's sustenance came from the church canteen, and his wardrobe was regularly updated through donations from the auxiliary ladies. He refrained from overindulgence, usually opting for durable work clothes. But for his birthday, the community treated him to a corduroy jacket, khaki pants, and a pair of nearly new brown wingtip shoes. While the pants became an instant favorite, he planned to return the jacket and shoes the following day. The ladies also insisted on grooming Daniel, an experience he described as an attack. His beard, now an inseparable part of his identity since moving to St. Vincent, was expertly trimmed. They capped off the transformation with a manicure, his first ever. That evening, dressed in his birthday best, Daniel strolled to the Shireen, a short walk from the church. He soon realized that the wingtip shoes, stylish as they were not made for walking. It was a mistake he vowed not to repeat. Outside the restaurant, Daniel reviewed the menu and noted that the prices were steeper than expected, though he had enough money for a splurge. Taking his time to decide, he was approached by a well-dressed woman who startled him with her question. "Excuse me, are you dining alone or waiting for someone?" she asked. Daniel blinked, realizing she was speaking to him. "Pardon?" She extended her hand with a warm smile. "My name is Marcia Nelson. I'm attending the Society's award ceremony at Empire Hall, but I'm in dire need of a chaperone. The meal is prepaid, all I need is your company during some dull speeches. No strings attached." Still hesitant, Daniel glanced wistfully at the restaurant menu before sighing. "Well, I suppose I can manage that. I'm Daniel Brown." Taking his hand, Marcia guided him toward Empire Hall. "Thank you, Daniel." The evening turned out to be far from what Daniel had planned, yet unexpectedly delightful. He never mentioned his birthday to Marcia, and she never probed into his life. Among the attendees, Daniel recognized several faces from St. Vincent's regulars, but no one seemed to recognize him. For the first time in years, he felt like an ordinary man, blending in seamlessly. The meal, though not his anticipated lobster, was enjoyable, and Marcia's company made the night memorable. She later drove him back to the church without questioning the unconventional drop-off point. Finally, Daniel could shed the uncomfortable wingtip shoes, vowing never to wear them again. The next morning, Father Doyle couldn't resist asking, "So, how was your birthday, Daniel?" "It was good, but not quite what I'd envisioned. No lobster, though. I ended up with sea bass. It was delicious, just not lobster." "How did that happen?" "A kind woman named Marcia Nelson invited me to an award ceremony. The meal was free, and I had a great time." "Marcia Nelson?" Father Doyle's eyebrows rose. "The lawyer?" "I'm not sure. She mentioned running a small law office downtown." "Daniel, she's famous around here. She runs a legal clinic for the poor and homeless." "You spent the evening with a notable woman." "She seemed normal enough to me," Daniel said, smiling. "Anyway, I enjoyed her company, though I doubt I'll see her again." But 2 weeks later, Marcia returned, this time asking Father Doyle directly if Daniel could accompany her to a charity auction. Doyle found the request highly amusing and didn't let Daniel forget it. Before the event, Marcia insisted they have dinner at a small local restaurant where Daniel recounted his story. 8 years ago, he had lived in Westchester with his wife, Caroline. Their daughter, Claire, had just left for college, marking the start of what Daniel had expected to be a new chapter as empty nesters. "Claire was your only child?" Marcia asked. "Yes," Daniel replied. "Caroline worked for a surgical instrument company, while I was an actuary for 2 decades. Life was comfortable, until it wasn't." "What happened?" Daniel paused. "It's simple. One Friday evening, Caroline told me she was spending the weekend in the Pocono Mountains, with her boss. No discussion, no explanation. I didn't ask, and she didn't elaborate." "Did this happen often?" Marcia's brow furrowed. Daniel's expression darkened slightly. "No, but that was just the beginning. I don't know much about him, all I'm aware of is that he's married, has 2 kids, and is at least 15 years older than Caroline. I wasn't angry, just a bit confused. I sat there silently, and within 10 minutes, she was gone. Well, sort of. The following day, I handled a few personal matters and then left. By the end of the week, I was already working under Father Doyle at St. Vincent's." "You didn't take anything with you?" "Not exactly." "Are you ready to head to the auction?" "I guess so, but I'd appreciate a clearer explanation later, okay?" "Okay." The auction was enjoyable, featuring local arts and crafts, antiques, and gift cards from nearby merchants. Marcia placed a bid on a painting created by a local artist. It seemed somewhat amateurish to me, but she said it would look lovely in her office. I think it was more about showing support for the community. Before dropping me off at the church, Marcia had one last question. "Did you reach out to your daughter after leaving?" "I did. I called Claire the day after and explained everything to her. She thought I was overreacting. I didn't argue but haven't spoken to her since." Marcia didn't respond to that. Instead, she thanked me for accompanying her, and I expressed my gratitude for the invitation. Looking back, I probably should have bid on something at the auction. Maybe next time. For the next few weeks, Father Doyle, along with the ladies in the thrift store and dining room, took great joy in teasing me about the outing. It was light-hearted fun, and I took it in stride. Then Marcia returned. "Daniel, I need another favor. There's a conference I need to attend next week in King of Prussia, and I'll have to stay overnight. Would you be okay with that?" "What do you mean?" "Well, would you be comfortable sharing a room, or would you prefer your own?" "That depends. Are you planning to take advantage of me?" You wouldn't be embarrassed if I did? I didn't reply, but the grin on my face gave her the answer she needed. Father Doyle overheard our conversation and burst into laughter as Marcia left. The conference in King of Prussia was on a much larger scale than the previous events. It was a statewide gathering. I followed Marcia as she moved through the crowd, chatting and making connections. I nodded along, enjoying myself, and getting the hang of it. And then, the mood shifted. Marcia Nelson. It's so good to see you. It's been too long. I winced at the voice, my lawyer and old friend, Seymour. We hadn't crossed paths in over 8 years, and I was relieved he didn't seem to recognize me immediately. Seymour Schlump. You haven't changed a bit. Still the same as in college. Fat, dumb, and happy, what about you? Skinny, smart, and not as depressed. They both laughed before Marcia introduced me. Seymour, this is my friend Daniel. He's my escort for the evening. Seymour's eyes landed on me, and recognition dawned. Danny? Danny boy. He grabbed me in a bear hug and shook me, grinning ear to ear. Do you two know each other? Marcia asked, surprised. Of course. Danny and I were best friends all through elementary school, until he disappeared on me. Seymour's tone turned professional as he continued. Daniel, we need to talk. It's time to address some unresolved matters. Can you meet me tomorrow? I glanced at Marcia for support, though I knew she couldn't provide it. Where? I asked. My office in Reading. All the paperwork is there. This can't wait any longer. Turning to Marcia, I asked, can we go to Reading tomorrow? Of course. I wouldn't miss this for anything. I love mysteries, and this one sounds like a doozy. I want to know everything, and I'm sure Seymour will tell me. For you, Marcia, everything, Seymour replied, shaking my hand and hugging me again. As Seymour walked away, Marcia shot me a teasing, intense look. You have 5 minutes to give me the Reader's Digest condensed version of what's going on. When I told you about leaving my wife, I mentioned handling everything before I left. Well, Seymour handled everything for me. Go on. Normally, a guardian of an inheritance requires a judge's approval. But in this case, Seymour was able to take care of everything without going to court. I signed various powers of attorney and other legal documents because I trusted him completely. Why? I needed to disappear for a while. I wanted to sever ties with Caroline but also protect the few assets I had. I owned some stocks and a couple of mutual funds I'd started before getting married. I figured Caroline wouldn't care about those since Bixler was already wealthy. Fair enough. Can we change the subject now? Please. Well then, since you're single now, how would you feel about switching our room to one with a king-size bed? Are you trying to seduce me? Absolutely. The next morning, Seymour was already waiting for us in his office, surrounded by a mountain of paperwork spread across the table. There was even a secretary present. He seemed unusually organized for this meeting, a stark contrast to the Seymour I used to know. Caroline divorced me almost 3 years ago because I left her. Since Bixler was incredibly wealthy, she didn't want anything in the divorce. Seymour had tried convincing her to sell the house as part of the settlement, but she refused, saying, let it go back to the bank. So, Seymour had her sign a few papers, and ownership transferred to me. Since then, Seymour has been renting out the house and using the income to make mortgage payments in my name. The tenants have even expressed interest in buying the property if I'm willing to sell. Seymour had also been filing my state and federal taxes for the past 8 years to maintain my legitimacy. The tax returns weren't exciting, but they ensured I stayed above board. My mutual funds and stocks had performed well during my absence, with all dividends reinvested. On top of that, Seymour had been holding on to 30 Krugerrands for me, something I'd completely forgotten about. Most of the meeting involved transferring ownership of everything back to me. Seymour handed me several documents to sign, officially releasing him from any further responsibility for my property and welfare. Marcia was thoroughly entertained throughout, asking Seymour numerous questions about Caroline's current situation. Seymour didn't have much information, but he humored her curiosity. I instructed Seymour to use his remaining power of attorney to sell the house. Before we wrapped up, he handed me a bill for his services over the past 8 years. While not cheap, Seymour had managed my assets so well that I was more than able to cover his fees. By the end of the meeting, I had a hefty stack of paperwork and a generous check. Without hesitation, I slid both over to Marcia, who eagerly accepted them with a slight smile. Father Doyle had mixed feelings about my departure. On one hand, he was thrilled for me, on the other, he was saddened to see me leave. He already had my replacement lined up, and I agreed to help train them before moving on. I think you can guess where I ended up. Marcia and I decided to live together for a while before making any permanent commitments. Her luxurious home, located in an upscale Philadelphia neighborhood, was conveniently within walking distance of her office. I found a job at the Community College of Philadelphia, processing student loans and Pell Grants. The work wasn't particularly challenging, but it was enjoyable. Getting to know Marcia's family and friends was a whole other experience. They were all highly educated and successful in their respective fields, yet I had no trouble fitting in. Most of them were thrilled Marcia had finally found a life partner. Epilogue. Before marrying Caroline, Carl Bixler had been diagnosed with early-stage Alzheimer's disease. Marcia broke the news to his children with great tact. Shortly thereafter, they managed to get their father's marriage to Caroline annulled. It was a swift process. Caroline was now single and unemployed. As for Daniel and his daughter Claire, they remained estranged.